Welcome to this episode of AI Talk. I'm Stefan Lendi, and today we'll explore how artificial intelligence and smart investing are transforming the Swiss tech startup landscape. Welcome to this episode.
This is AI Talk with Stefan Lendi.
My guest today is Dr. Thomas Dübendorfer, a renowned serial entrepreneur, investor, and president of SICTIC, Switzerland's leading angel investor club for early-stage technology startups. Thomas has co-founded successful companies like Spontax, ContaVista, and Frontify, and served as tech lead for security and privacy projects at Google Zurich for 7 years. In 2024, he was awarded SECA Business Angel of the Year. Welcome, Thomas. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
And also welcome to the studio. As usual, great to see you again, Dalith Steiger-Gablinger, co-founder of Swiss Cognitive and one of the leading voices in the global AI ecosystem. She will, of course, as you know, offer reflections and insights after each section of our conversation. Dalith, great to see you.
Hi, great to see you too, at least to hear you.
Let's dive into what makes Switzerland a top location for AI startups. Let's look at some of the cases, some of the best practices that we have seen. I also like to understand how Switzerland's AI startup environment is actually changing. I want to explore the perspective of venture capitalists here in Switzerland and, of course, understand how investments shape the future of innovation so we see what it takes to grow a global tech ecosystem. Thomas, you've got a strong academic and corporate background, including your time as tech lead at Google. When and why, do you remember when that was, did you actually start focusing on artificial intelligence?
So I've been in touch with that for more than a quarter of a century. First time, 1998, when I took a lecture on neural networks for handwriting recognition. And then in the year 2000, when I wrote a semester thesis on recognizing objects in nature by using a lot of machine learning for that. And also at Google, I worked on projects to reduce fraud in the advertising system. And for that, we used also machine learning and deep tech technologies.
We see a huge fascination on the market with large language models as AI seems to become accessible to the masses. But what is your fascination about AI tech, and how does that fascination influence your investment decisions at SICTIC?
I guess the current fascination is mostly because with the large language models, it seems that the machine truly understands human language and it comes across much smarter than before when it was just data-driven, data processing-based stuff, right? And this interaction between humans in real time and machine, this truly makes a lot of things accessible, which were not accessible to automation. So you can read documents, you can summarize it, you can interact with your own data that other people cannot. And this gives you a huge advantage, right? And in startup land at SICTIC, when we look at investment cases, there's two ways of startups. One of them, they drive AI to the next level by providing better tools, better foundational models. And others, they just use it in a very clever way for a very specific customer segment.
How specifically, when you're working with startups, when you're assessing startups, does your background in computer science actually help? You spoke about the two kinds of AI startups, the ones that drive AI forward and others that actually use AI. How critically do you assess those startups? What specifically do you look at?
Yes, I always want to understand what do they mean when they say they use AI. So is it just that they use existing technology and build something small on top of it, like an application of an existing model, or do they truly push the borders to something which is novel and innovative? And for investors, it's much more interesting to invest in a startup that is driving the border of AI and coming up with something which is new and gives additional possibilities than just look at the case, which is a simple application of an existing model, because that's interchangeable. Anybody could do that. You don't need to do this in a startup, right?
Can you give me some specific examples of startups in the one field versus the other?
Yeah, sure. Let's look at those that actually drive the borders of AI. One of them is DeepJudge from Zurich, a legal tech startup. They make in-house data of law firms readily accessible. So you can basically find the documents faster by intent-based search. So you find it by the meaning of what you wanted, not just by keywords. Then you can work with these documents, by getting summaries of the document, by asking questions to your own data. And this gives you a huge advantage to do research with your own data. So you don't have to go to the old partner and hope he has some time for you for a case. You can go straight to everything which was documented and already prepare the case without having a lot of time need for that and a lot of know-how need for that.
So we're talking about tapping into existing knowledge, but also about retaining experience within a law firm. That does change the business models of law firms, though, right?
It totally does, yes. It means that a lot of boring jobs, which have been done mostly by paralegal people, like a lot of research just to prepare a case, can now be done in seconds by anybody in the company. So it's like a power tool which wasn't available before. But we can also look at other applications. Another one, for example, is Ethan AI. What they do is they look at the industrial production processes and they use computer vision to find outliers which might not have the expected quality. And the nice thing with that is it automatically finds out what is good and bad in the production lines. So basically, without a lot of configuration, you just plug it in, the cameras, and then it tells you if you have a problem with your production or not.
Wow. So these things truly streamline processes. They also change business models in that moment. I'm still kind of stuck with the law firms. All of that changes pretty much the number of billable hours. So there's fewer billable hours and higher productivity. The market is changing. Either you drive that change, Dalith, or you are affected by change. You are driven by it.
Absolutely. But to make it really simple, what I like to say is if you look in a restaurant, they have a dishwasher. Sometimes those applications are just making our life faster, easier. In a lot of cases, even they bring more security in. And if I look at the law firm, there's a lot of repetitive work that needs to be done that now you have an AI assistant, let's put it in a very simple way, that supports you to do a better work. So at the end, the human being is still working a lot, but there is another content, another drive behind it. So our hourly base might be more expensive, but at the end of the day, the client will pay less because a lot is being done with tools.
Dalith, do you have from your perspective other startups where you see similar changes happening, similar positive changes that also change the DNA and the competitive edge?
Indeed. And before that, I would like to add something. What we also like to differentiate is you have startups, they produce an AI-based solution, means that the end solution is working with AI. But we have a lot of cases also that using AI to develop a product, like drug design, like material design. So at the end of the day, the end product doesn't have any AI in it. It's just a process. So this is also an additional thing, especially in medicine or in material science, that is very important. What we see from a supportive way for the human being are the agent. We're totally convinced that in a few years, probably even less, we're all going to have our private agent. And there we see already a lot going on. Important there is that it's not only an agent that you give the people, you have to put a methodology in it.
Thomas, we're adding agents. Is that something you also see happening on the market?
I mean, this is already reality. It's not actually far out in the future. I mean, there's two different things. One is assistant and one is agent. The agent takes a test, completes it and comes back, right? While the assistant has this constant interaction with the user. Let me maybe give you an example for an assistant. So I wrote a book called The Swiss Angel Investor Handbook, 250 pages about how to start to invest in Swiss startups. It's for free on angelhandbook.ch. And now a lot of people came with questions about, okay, how does this work? What is vesting for founders? Why do you need liquidation preference? All these complicated terms out of venture capital. And the nice thing is, with the large language models, we could now provide an assistant which answers all the questions based on the book. So you can just ask anything in any language, in German, French, English, whatever. The book is in English, but thanks to these language models, you can now ask in any language anything you want to know about how to start to invest. We just put this up last week on assistant.SICTIC.ch. Anybody can now ask questions about angel investing, and it's Swiss specific because the book combines venture capital from US with what is special for Switzerland.
I find it so interesting, and when in English we're talking about venture capital, in Switzerland our term is risk capital. Is that also something that distinguishes the Swiss market, that distinguishes the mindset of Swiss investors versus, for example, American investors from your perspective, Thomas?
Yeah, I think venture capital is very positively connotated because you build a venture, something new. It comes from adventure, right? You try something out, you expect the best.
There's a sense of excitement there, which I do not see with risk capital in that sense.
Exactly. And there were a lot of ventures in the past, like people building big ships and then exploring new territories, right? That was a venture, right? If you had talked just about the risk that you would sink, you would never go out to the sea, right? And now here in Switzerland and in Europe, we talk about risk culture and failure culture in a way that is very different from how it is seen in US. Like in US, you learn from a failure. And here in Europe, a failure is a proof that you're dumb and stupid, right? And that shouldn't be the case, because for doing a big venture, you always make some mistakes on the way to achieve the end goal, right? So you need to have an attitude that the failure is something useful, not something bad.
And mistakes are learning experiences. How has this mindset affected the Swiss market? How has it affected Swiss R&D and innovation?
I think what we're good at is we can solve highly complex problems. We have perseverance to really dive deeply into understanding the problem before we then solve it. It's not a short-term thing, right? And at the same time, it's an obstacle that people don't want to make a mistake. So we strive too much a little bit for perfectionism. That sometimes means it takes way too long to really deliver a result, or maybe it's too expensive once it's out there. So, and that's not very compatible with building a fast scaling startup, which is allowed to do some mistakes on the growth path, right?
What does the same thing mean for investors? You just explored the perspective of the startups, how they do research, how they innovate. What about investors? Are there specific phases where they are less reluctant, others where they are more reluctant to invest compared to global investors?
I think there's a group of people which totally understand what is the potential of venture capital here. I mean, look at the size. We have 400 private individuals that want to risk their own capital by investing into super early stage startups. So these people, they truly understand what they do, and for them, venture is positive. They always see the possibilities that they support. They see that they can create jobs, they can change how the industry works, right? So on a small scale, this attitude has changed, right? But on the bigger scale, if you look at all the population here, and also how Switzerland as a country deals with investing in high risk things. As a country, the culture still needs to be stable, predictable, and don't ever make a mistake and don't ever lose any money, right?
And Thomas, there is Swiss modesty is the thing. Like, we don't talk about our successes. And I see even startups that have made it, they do not talk about their successes. They don't talk about the money they've made that they can now invest again. Why don't they do that? Why is that? Is this a cultural thing? Is it that Swiss modesty?
I think it's our anti-elite and anti-hero culture. We don't really want to have single people having too much power, too much money, or too much visibility. And I think that this is a little bit based on the history, right? We never want to stick out our heads. We want to do a decent job, but always be a little bit under the radar. And look at how others do that. Like in US, everybody talks about very few figures, and they're super public. And this hero culture, we don't have it here. Now, maybe that's good, but it also makes it difficult to show what we have, right? In the last 12 years, we found 54 companies which have reached a $1 billion valuation, so-called unicorns. And nobody talks about that, right? Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. Let's talk about them now. Give us 2 or 3 of those unicorns, Thomas, and also Dalith. I'd like to hear about your favorites of those unicorns so we get a better understanding of what has been happening on the Swiss market. What are some of your favorites, Thomas?
I mean, we have a lot of really amazing startups here, but they don't get to that visibility level that the people know it. I mean, for example, look at Sportradar, a really amazing company, but nobody had this on the radar until they really did an IPO, right? So they did all data collection around sports events globally, and they made a huge effort to be the best data provider for that. And there's, of course, On shoes. Who would have thought that we would produce sports fashion, like, and even compete with the Nike and Adidas of the world? But we also have many of them, for example, in the space of ICT. So we have companies which, for example, do backup software. It sounds like a really boring business, like VM. Nobody talks about that they are so precious, right?
So these unicorns are there, Dalith. What are some of your favorites?
One success story that I really like is Avaloq, which is like pretty old already. And I remember that nobody knew even who or what Avaloq is. And that was a few years ago. And I think this is really sad because these people who invested, who built up this company, they reinvested their money exactly in new startups. So the experience that they share, this is one of the older ones. Then there is another one, Animatico, that they actually, after, if I remember right, 2 years, it's a spin-off out of the ETH. After around 2 years, they have been acquired already by NVIDIA. And I mean, these are also success stories, but people are not talking about that. These are our people, our students.
And we have it in lots of different areas. In medtech and health tech, for example, Ipsamed, that really helps people with diabetes a lot by having a really cool system where they measure the glucose level and then automatically put in enough insulin such that the body stays in a healthy state, right? Or Sophia Genetics, NB Therapeutics, and many others, right? And these are truly innovative companies that almost nobody knows that they were so successful, right?
What has to change? What has to change so that in Switzerland, we learn to make mistakes, we learn from those mistakes, we get faster at being innovative, and we celebrate that innovation, not in order to be proud of ourselves, but to make a difference and to share examples of these different successes, Dalith?
I think one of the most important things is that we change to an experience culture. It's not about failure. If every baby or toddler by the third time falling down, you would tell them, you will never walk, just continue crawling.
That would be brutal. That would be so brutal.
Exactly. So this is what we're doing with our country. We're still crawling, although we have the best talents and the best innovation. So really changing into an experience culture. And there again, and we discussed it before, if it comes down to investments, the perfectionism, startups try to work on something before they go to the next round, instead of having the investors supporting them with money to fail fast and to do the next steps much faster. So we're burning sometimes money just because we're not giving it early enough.
And a lot of capital, Thomas, is stuck in pension funds that do not invest, that do not use their capital as venture capital.
Yeah, that's because it's currently not their mandate. I mean, they have to keep the money and earn a little bit, right? But they don't have the mandate, for example, to create local jobs or to do venture capital. And they might also not have the know-how to do direct investments, which I totally understand, right? But there's now new initiatives, like Deep Tech Nation Switzerland tries to build a fund-of-fund structure where pension funds would invest into an evergreen fund where they also can get some money back because sometimes they need the liquidity. They cannot plan to just block the money for 10 years like in a regular venture capital fund. And now if you have it in an evergreen structure where you have some liquidity, they can also take some of the money back. And then this fund would invest in other venture funds, which then ultimately invest directly into startups. And now with this huge diversification, the chance of a total loss is much, much smaller, and you still get decent proceeds.
And at the same time, you just spoke about Deep Tech Nation, it is called, right?
Deep Tech Nation Switzerland, exactly. Yeah.
Deep Tech Nation Switzerland, they also make a difference for startups that are in need of venture capital, and also these startups that have actually made it reinvest in further startups. So we bring those stories forward, we show best practices, and if we have one or two big cases that are made visible, that are appreciated, that will also make a difference for the general mindset of the market that we choose to go on this adventure together.
Yes, we need to tell the good stories, right? If the founders don't want to tell it because they're too humble, right? Somebody else needs to tell the good stories.
Deep Tech Nation Switzerland, Dalith, you're smiling from one ear to the other. Deep Tech Nation Switzerland, an initiative you have been waiting for.
Absolutely. And Thomas just said it. Others should talk about the success of what we have in this country. This is much stronger. We have to do this share for success. This is our DNA. And this is what I would love to see in our country much more, supporting also this deep tech nation, making sure that our startups get the visibility, get the money, and that we are all proud of it, talking about them, especially when we're traveling around the world.
I'm going to go explore. It's a deeptechnation.ch. I just found the link. That's exactly where all these projects are showcased. Thank you so much for pointing out how Switzerland works, for showing us some of the unicorns that we've had in Switzerland, and for helping us understand what the different factors are in Switzerland that need to change, but that also have changed and have proven successful over the past few years. Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas Dübendorfer, for joining us in this episode.
Thanks for having me.
And a huge thank you to Dalith Steiger-Gablinger, as always, for being here, for your thoughts and for your reflections.
Thanks a lot, and let's invest together.
So here's the link again, deeptechnation.ch, CH for Switzerland, deeptechnation.ch. More about Thomas can, of course, be found at SICTIC, SICTIC.ch, and more about our AI Talk podcast, of course, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on the DAB channels of Swiss Podcast here in Switzerland, and online, and of course on social media, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and at www.aipodcast.ch. Until next time, I'm Stefan Lendi. Stay curious.
AI Talk is produced by Newberry Media and Swiss Cognitive and supported by Innovation Zurich and Swiss ICT.
Want to discover why Zurich is one of Europe's leading innovation hubs? Visit innovation.Zurich, your gateway to Zurich's vibrant innovation scene. Meet the people and ideas shaping the future, and see why the canton of Zurich is a top location for tech, science, and entrepreneurship in Europe.